Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're dipping back in the world of Hayao Miyazaki with his 1997 Avatar prequel, Princess Mononoke. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you're a regular listener of this show and you're interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page at patreon.com/thenextreel. And don't forget, we have a Listener's Choice episode coming up soon. In fact, we're doing the drawing next week in our episode for Spirited Away. Patreon patrons are automatically entered into a drawing to tell us what films to discuss and to join us on the show to make their case why.
We've got a blot spot. Friend of the show, Ben Lott, has written in with his rebound on our final Pablo Larraín film, No.
Naturally, everyone is expecting me to despise another journey into Pablo Larraín's filmography, but I didn't hate No. In fact, I kind of liked it. The period-appropriate visual style was awesome, and finally, we actually got to dig into the Chilean politics that were just happening in the background for the other films. It's not the kind of movie that I'll watch again and again, but it was way better than I expected. Your rank 190, my rank 188.
That's pretty close.
That's pretty close, and I'd say that's a good sign. I think, despite the fact that that Ben ended up hating the first two films, I think it was a valuable trilogy of films to look at. So I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad we made Ben watch them.
Yeah, I am too. Anytime, let's do trailers. I want to go first, Andy.
Why don't you?
My film, Andy, is Unlocked. And first of all, let me say, it's a Numi Rapace vehicle. You know, we like the Numi. And in fact, here's a film that I didn't even think was happening. It was called Rupture. Have you seen the trailer for this?
I don't know. Have I? I don't think so.
You probably haven't. Let me assure you, it's not the movie you think it's going to be when the trailer starts. No, it's not. That's not even the film I'm talking about right now, though. Rupture is out as of a couple of weeks ago, but no, you haven't heard anything about it, and there's probably a reason. It's got a 4.8 on IMDb right now.
Oh.
Numi's... yeah. Numi's next movie is Unlocked, and it's coming out pretty soon. It's the story of she plays a CIA interrogator, and according to IMDb, she is lured into a ruse that puts London at risk of biological attack. And it stars Numi, it stars Orlando Bloom and Toni Collette and Michael Douglas and John Malkovich, you know, a number of people that you'd think, hey, these people are in good movies. I'm going to see this. And then you realize as you're watching the trailer, goodness, I've seen this movie before, like 1,000 times. This is a movie that has been shaken up like in a dice game and rolled out on the movie Monopoly board, and they bought all of the CIA interrogator tropes and just jammed them back on screen. This looks to be about the least creative interpretation of a Bourne story, with the exception of the fact that Bourne is a lady person this time. It's possible this is going to be a fascinating, fun story, but after this trailer, I have very little reason to believe it so. It is written by Peter O'Brien. Peter O'Brien has to his writing credits a short called Self-Storage. He wrote the video game Halo Reach, and now Unlocked. So this is his first feature film. It is directed by Michael Apted.
Michael Apted has directed some films that I've liked in the past, but he's not a director who always hits him out of the park. I think he's an interesting fellow, but sometimes I think there are films that may not be the types of movies that he really should be directing. I don't know. I mean, he helmed which of the Bond
World
movies
Is Not Enough.
World Is Not Enough. That's right.
Yep.
But for some reason, I always think of,
though, Andy, you should have to note The World Is Not Enough, and then 2 years later, you know what else came out? Enough, Andy, with Jennifer Lopez.
Well,
Enough.
That's what I was going to say. There are movies that he has directed, like Enough with Jennifer Lopez, that just...
I don't think you celebrated that joke well enough, Andy. I'm going to keep interrupting you until you laugh. The World Is Not Enough, and then Enough comes out. Come on,
all
man.
right, fine. Ha, ha, ha.
All right. Have
You're
your
so
damn
funny.
point.
He's a director that's always confused me, because I think that when he's doing his documentaries, like his 7-Up series, I think that there's something interesting that he's doing there. And some films like, Coal Miner's Daughter, that seems to kind of fit in with the vibe. Gorillas in the Mist, those are movies that seem like the types of movies that he should be doing. I mean, even Thunderheart I enjoyed quite a bit. Nell, I think that's kind of where things started slipping, and he started doing a lot of these things that I'm just like, what is he doing? Like, and why are people giving him these movies that just don't seem like the types of things he should be directing? And Unlocked feels that way. But I will say, I was excited up through the moment where she gets the phone call and they say, we have somebody for you to interrogate, and she's already there. I was like, okay, this is really intriguing. And then it just went downhill from there. But up until that moment, I was like, this is kind of a really interesting trailer. And then it fell apart. But I don't know. It's an interesting cast. I don't know what happened to Toni Collette's hair in it, but
yeah.
Whoa. I don't know. Yeah. A lot of bleach, a lot of cutting and bleach. But I don't know. I like the cast a lot. I'd like to think that it's something that would actually be good. I'm not expecting it, but this is one of those things that I probably would, if it's late at night and I can't sleep, I'd probably watch it. So it's one of those movies.
Well,
go, Michael Apted.
I will say, I just watched Neighbors 2: Sorority Rising, so I know that feeling so well. Let me say, this movie is already out in the UK, and I know that Kermode and Mayo have already done their review on this, and their biggest critique or criticism of it is Orlando Bloom's plucky British thief turned incredibly talented spy pivot in the film. Apparently, they didn't have enough actors to carry out all of the different tropes they needed displayed on screen, so they threw the rest of them into Orlando Bloom. So it should be interesting to watch just to see the kind of Frankenstein's monster that comes out of it. That it is open now in the UK, and in fact, a lot of other places around the world. It started opening in Russia April 27th, all the way through May and early June to Taiwan. So UK, Ireland, Lithuania, Croatia, you should all go see it. We won't be able to see it here in the United States until September 1st. What does that mean? They're just dodging the summer release schedule?
All I can say about your movie, this is my last thought on it, is as you were talking about it, I did end up looking up the Rupture movie that Numi is in.
It's almost a prequel.
What is that, though? Wow. I don't even know what to say about that movie.
Yeah. Not the movie you think it's going to be.
Oh, I don't know.
See, one's already out. That one's already out there.
Yeah, the write-up pretty much spells it out as she's being transformed into a spider or something. I don't even want to know. Anyway, Pete.
Yeah, good times. What's your trailer, Andy?
Completely different tone. My trailer is for The Hero, a really just fantastic-looking trailer that I've got to say, there's this wonderful actor out there who has a wonderful voice that sounds like velvet and velvet and cigars and bourbon. I don't know. There's something about his voice that just sounds so right in whatever he says. And that actor is Sam Elliott. And you think about Sam Elliott though, how often can you say that Sam Elliott is helming a picture? And I think that's what I see in this trailer for the movie The Hero. It's a Sam Elliott vehicle. And it gets me so excited to say, wow, this is Sam Elliott's movie. He's carrying the thing. And I don't know. I just got really excited. This is a film written and directed by Brett Haley, also co-written by Mark Botch. And Brett Haley is kind of, I don't know if I could say he's making a name for himself, but he's directed a couple of films that take, aging actors and does interesting things with them. His previous film, I'll See You in My Dreams, was a story with Blythe Danner as the lead. In this film, The Hero, you've got this story about Sam Elliott, this aging cowboy actor who's, finds out he's got cancer. And then he's trying to come to terms with it and trying to reconcile his life with his estranged daughter, Lucy, played by Kristen Ritter, our wonderful Jessica Jones. And then he's, hangs out smoking pot with his guy that he used to act with, Jeremy, played by Nick Offerman. And it kind of hooks up with this stand-up comic played by Laura Prepon. And, I don't know. I really like the vibe of it, and I'm kind of really excited about this film, which is weird because it just seems like this kind of small character piece about this aging actor. But I don't know. I just got really excited seeing Sam Elliott as the lead for something. What'd you think?
First of all, I'm of course right with you. I think it's fantastic to see Sam Elliott as the lead. He is a guy with an awful lot of credits. For just, the bit part, the wise, weathered old wizard who gives you just great advice. He's the voiceover guy. I like that. But the guy I was most excited about in this movie was Nick Offerman. is playing a character that I feel like I haven't seen from Nick Offerman in a while. He has he's got a little bit of the Colbert syndrome. It's tough to look at Stephen Colbert and not see Stephen Colbert, and I feel a little bit like that with Nick Offerman off of Parks and Rec, and some of his personality is just very very much sort of is that, and to see him with his face shaved a little bit differently and just the way his body was moving, I'm very excited about to see that. Laura Prepon, I think, also looks great. I was very excited to see her in this, and I think their relationship looks really interesting. And so, when he says he's 71, it kind of, I like the idea of them exploring that sort of young old relationship and him. What is he getting out of this sarcastic, younger comedian? I just found myself really interested in that relationship. So I'm actually really bullish. It feels again like one of those films that we've sort of seen before but never quite done this way. And so it reminds me of your trailer last week. I think it was that The Big Sick, which was something we've seen before but never quite that way. So I'm going to go ahead and celebrate that.
Fantastic. Well, this one has been running the festival circuit and is going to be hitting theaters June 9th. So it'll be a nice little bit of counter programming for the summer.
And you see, he's doing one of his upcoming films is A Star Is Born, which is not. It looks like it's written and directed by Bradley Cooper, and stars Bradley Cooper and Sam Elliott. Do you see this?
That's really, yeah. I'm looking at it right now. Interesting. And Bradley
like a really
Cooper.
project,
yeah. Huh.
I haven't seen a trailer drop for this, but I think we need to look for it because it looks like a very curious project for these people, and it also stars. It looks like as the young ingenue, Lady Gaga. Nice.
Well, I don't know if she's the young ingenue, but she's. I don't even see
certainly
her in it. But
third build.
Stephanie Germanotta, Andrew Dice Clay, Dave Chappelle. That's an interesting cast.
Fascinating. This is a place for gods and demons.
In a time when gods walk the earth, an epic battle rages between the encroaching civilization of man and the gods of the forest.
When the forest has been cleared and the wolves wiped out, this place will be the richest land in the world.
Now, the fate of the world rests on the courage of one fearless princess.
I'm not afraid to die, and I would do anything to get the humans out of here.
And one brave warrior.
You fight like a demon, boy, like something possessed.
What exactly are you here for?
To see with eyes unclouded by hate.
Now watch closely, everyone. I'm going to show you how to kill a god.
1997, Andy. We're back with our friend Hayao Miyazaki and his film Princess Mononoke. This is not the movie I remember. It's been a long time since I've seen this. And that first arrow shot that slices off the dude's hands, that reminded me that this is not that movie that I remembered. After we saw Totoro, every Hayao Miyazaki movie has includes a big, sweet, cuddly Totoro in it in my head. Now, I know that's not true, and this movie with the giant wolf shaking the guy by his own head, like that brought it back to reality for me. How did this hold up for your family?
We had all seen it before, and I do every time I'm watching it, I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I should be showing this to my kids. But I will say there's something to be said about violence like this in an animated film. And I'm not saying it's right to show these films to your kids, but they handle it in a different way. And they, talking to my kids about it afterward, I had a sense that it was really shocking and surprising to see what happened. But I think it kind of, in their eyes, kind of spoke to just kind of how serious some of this stuff was. And I mean, yeah, those first couple arrow shots that take off, the arms of the guy and then the head of the guy. I mean, they were just like, whoa, like they just like totally flabbergasted that happened. And really they just kind of took them by surprise that this was not your run of the mill film that would be released by Disney. This is a totally different type of film that is a little more adult. But I think that they, while they may not have understood everything going on within the film, the way that things were depicted and the level of the violence and just kind of the just, I guess you could say, intensity of the story, it just, I don't know. I had a sense just talking to them that there was a different take on it than something with like Frozen. You know, it was a deeper, it reached into them a little bit more. I'm not saying they would rather watch this all the time instead of Frozen or something like that, but I think that I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into it because I want to believe that it was okay to have shown this to my kids, but I think that they took it in stride and they just kind of watched it and said, this is, it's a fantasy story, and it was kind of okay.
It's got a lot going on. I think so. Family aside, and my family was kind of the same way. I mean, they definitely get that there's a lot going on in the film, and we haven't had our due to intervening events, we haven't had our post movie chat about it yet. And so, like you, I'm not sure how much is kind of stuck with them in terms of the deeper messages of the film. I think they liked it, but they did not like it as much as the other Miyazaki films that we've certainly done on this show in the past. They didn't connect with it as well. And I have to say, I didn't connect with it as well either. I expected it to hold up, to live up to my memory of it. And it didn't, in that way. And as entertaining as kind of the action sequences were for me, I didn't find myself really resonating with the message as well as I think I had. Maybe I'm just overexposed to messages like this right now. Maybe I don't know, but it didn't really hit home. Did it for you? Did it really lock in for you?
Not. It's tricky. I actually watched this. I ended up splitting it halfway with the English dub, and then half of it in the Japanese with subtitles. Mostly because my kids fell asleep and had to finish it at a different time. But the English dub frustrates me, and I get distracted by some of the voices in there, particularly Billy Bob Thornton. And so I kind of struggle a little bit with the way that the English delivery is. I find myself enjoying it better in the Japanese and easier to connect to it. That being said, I didn't love the film when I watched it. When it finished, I go, that was a really interesting story. But I will say, this is one of those movies that has really stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I've just had a lot of imagery going through my head, and I found myself over the last week just kind of really processing it, and just my estimation for it has been growing and growing. And I'm really kind of I'm fully on loving it camp right now.
Really?
Yeah.
The fully on loving it camp.
That's where I am.
I haven't been to that camp.
It's full of lovers, Pete.
Sounds.
It's a little bit naughty.
Naughty. So this, it definitely carries forward a lot of the themes we've already discussed about Miyazaki's films. I should preface this by saying I am not a Miyazaki historian and expert, but I think we can say that this safely lands in the Miyazaki trope camp. It is man versus nature. It is the impact of technology on man. What technology it does to us. Technology and war as poison. It is very much a story that poses the questions of are we able to exist peacefully with our surroundings? Would you say?
I think that's a pretty fair assessment of it. I think there's a few things going on. It's about us being able to kind of live in harmony with our surroundings and each other. And I think there's this sense of kind of the death and rebirth and loss of innocence and, just the way that things change over the course of life. So I think there's a lot of different ways that and a lot of different things you can see in the story. And to that end, I think it's really strong. And I like the way that it doesn't give you just easy answers. There's nothing that's straightforward in the film. It's very ambiguous. You have antagonists that do really good things. You have protagonists that aren't necessarily great. These gods of nature, none of them are really nice. They're all kind of, fighting and grumpy and ready to just kind of tear into things. I think it's a really interesting depiction of the world, and it's almost like this very yin-yang sort of nature of things and how everything has kind of a good and bad side. And it's just, it made for, I thought, just a much more interesting world that that Miyazaki and his team had painted here.
It is much more timely than I expected it to be. And this time around watching it, I found myself much more intrigued by our antagonist and her role and the Iron Village and that
would be a town, Pete.
Iron Town. You're right. Iron Metropolis, and the way it relates to its natural surroundings, and in order to do the things that were important to her, in this case, there's a whole question about the cost of, frankly, the cost of healthcare, which I did not remember from the first time around. Like, at what cost do we keep our internal sort of leper community? We're welcoming them in. We are putting them in the corner, so they're not great, but we're welcoming them in. But we have to destroy the environment to actually heal them, but we're welcoming them in. Like the conflict that exists in that narrative, I found really interesting this time around, and I didn't even remember that it existed last time. And again, to your point, it just outlines the deep complexity of the story and the stuff that he has jammed in to this film. It really I don't know. It treats the audience with a greater degree of sophistication, I think, than, like you say, what we're used to from Disney. I think we just get much more advanced sort of propositions about how we think about the world around us.
Yeah, Studio Ghibli is not one to shy away from this sort of stuff. I mean, just look at one of their early films, Grave of the Fireflies, if you want to get a taste of the fact that these guys don't shy away from challenging stories. Something I really was drawn to on this watch was this connection that this story has, this tonal relationship it really kind of has with J.R.R. Tolkien's work in like Lord of the Rings, and how there's this sense of man and nature, and how man, as mankind advances and does what he needs to do to grow and to improve, becomes so destructive and destroys nature. And you think of Saruman and what everything that he's doing as he's kind of creating this, I guess you could say, a city of orcs, and how nature kind of sweeps in and takes back control. It very much felt of the same world with this, which I thought was very interesting. But what I thought was so moving in this film was how, in the end, you get this spirit of the forest. You have this sacrifice that Ashitaka and San are willing to make, by rescuing the head of the forest spirit and returning it to its body, which is this massive thing that's kind of destroying everything, knowing that they're likely going to die. And as they are holding it, of course, all this demon stuff is spilling all over them, and their bodies are covered in the marks of the demon. And just saying that just sounds so dark and like I'm talking about a horror movie here. But what I like about it is the forest spirit gets its head back and saves them, essentially, and then it's like it's healed, but then it like falls and dies, and it spreads itself and allows for this rebirth of life again, and everything that it had destroyed is once again full of life, and it's just this beautiful just nature everywhere. The tree spirits come back, but at the same time, like I think it was Okoto says when he's talking to the wolves, man is going to, we're going to diminish until we're unable to speak, and we're just going to be game that the humans are going to hunt. And I think that was kind of like, this whole thing was kind of, the end of this era that we were kind of witnessing. And as the forest spirit died, you have this enlightenment, I guess you could say, with some of the humans. You see certainly that with Lady Eboshi, and how she's like, we're going to rebuild Irontown, but we're going to do it differently this time. And Ashitaka is going to help, and San is going to stay with the wolves, but you get this sense that she's kind of going to be helping. But at the same time, you get this sense that world where these gods, the wolves and boars and monkeys and all that, are going to just turn into game. And the only way that nature can really stay the way that it was is by our hand and what we do to kind of help preserve it. So I don't know. I really liked that. It was like a really intense, big message for this movie to be spitting out. And it felt very Miyazaki, but I feel like this was probably the strongest way that he's told it.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you gave that preamble. I feel like I got it. I didn't think about it quite so deeply, but when the Daywalker, nature god, Nightwalker laid down and died, and everything got green again, I couldn't help but think of, this is your last shot, right? We used to have this daily regrowth and rebirth, and everything was fine. You could screw up during the day, but everything would be fine the next day. Everything we'd be okay. And now we don't have that anymore. So to your point, everything that we do now, this was our last shot to have any help. Now we have to do everything on our own and take responsibility for our own actions each day, because no one else is going to zero out the clock again for us. And I think that is a very powerful message. In terms of the script, it feels well structured. It has some sequences of Miyazaki patience and restraint, and yet some sequences of fantastic character design and fast moving action, and as we've already talked about, some violence. Talk a little bit about the title, because it's not her name.
Yeah, I think that's something that really sounds confusing when it's called Princess Mononoke. You assume that, she's a princess and her name is Mononoke. Well, that's not the case, everybody calls her San in the film. Mononoke actually translates to spirit or monster. So kind of roughly it's translated as like monster princess, because she's kind of this human who's living with these gods. And so she's kind of this princess who has crossed worlds and is helping them. But she's kind of this balance between these two sides almost. That's something I think is really interesting, is it seems like she would be the person that is in the place to kind of help make this change. It's really Ashitaka who does it. And I think it's almost like the wolves have their anger and the frustration and kind of like their warlike nature has rubbed off on her to such an extreme that it really takes Ashitaka to help her kind of transition to a place. And so she has that character arc, as she's the one who, as the film comes to an end, she goes back with them, but at the same time, you get this sense that she's now kind of going to partner up with the humans to help everybody kind of move forward. So it's a really interesting title, because it's like, she's this monster princess, but she's the one who's going to be the balance between the two worlds, I guess, as they move forward.
Which I think is interesting, and this ties to a comment that my kids made right when the movie was over, which was, apparently Miyazaki had another working title, which translates to, the story of Ashitaka, or the legend of Ashitaka. So you kind of get the sense that he was trying to figure out, what are we going to call this? Is it going to be titled after her? Is it going to be titled after him? He is really, after all, the central character. I mean, he leads us through the journey of the narrative pretty much the whole time. And she doesn't come into the picture until, reasonably into the narrative. But my kids, the first thing they said was, why on earth did they name it after her? Which I thought was really interesting, just as an aside. Like, they did not connect necessarily with her as the principal protagonist enough to merit naming the movie after her, which, from the mouths of babes, man. I don't know what you want to make of that, but I thought it was interesting that it sounds like Miyazaki was kind of struggling with that too.
Yeah, it sounds like he preferred the Ashitaka title. It's one of those things where it almost it makes you think, were they overthinking it? Like, the princess films in the world of animation obviously have left their mark on society. There are a lot of prominent princess films. Was this an opportunity for them to make a princess film, but do it in kind of the Miyazaki style? And I'm wondering if that's why they opted to go that route rather than The Legend of Ashitaka.
Well, and, I don't know. It's almost sort of a tongue-in-cheek look at Princess, right? She the first time we see her, she's got blood all over her face and hands. She's got a dagger in her hand. I mean, she's messed up. And it fits in the sort of lineage of Miyazaki women. I mean, this whole movie is driven by very strong women, and whether we're looking at San herself, or our principal antagonist is also a strong woman character, and we have a number of women characters in the film that are funny, or whatever. They lead the rebellion, or they lead the resistance at Irontown. It is all led by women, and so it's funny to look at that title and look at toying with the title, putting it from the perspective of the male character, the central male character. Seems like it doesn't do enough service to who really drives this film.
It does make me feel like if Disney has purchased or has agreed to release all of these Studio Ghibli films in the U.S., if perhaps they should have a Princess Mononoke added to the lineup of princesses in their parks. And
yes.
maybe Princess Mononoke can ride the wolf in the parades, and the wolf can like grab children by the head and shake them around a little bit
until blood.
until San says no.
No, I think that is, Andy, I think you're on it, and I think they need to sell the large plastic daggers in all of the stores, and the face makeup. That's what the princesses are doing, is like you can get your face painted like Mononoke. Like you could do the Mononoke makeover. Yes.
So and then in her parade lineup, all the lepers would be the ones like with the flag bearers and everything.
And there's a Mononoke ride, Princess Mononoke ride, where you have to ride on the worm demon boar, and
yes,
and at the end you have to suck the iron ball out of the shoulder of a giant wolf. And I think this is, they should ask. They should
come to us. Oh my!
Miyazaki World as an event at Disney would be the most horrific, therapy-inducing locale you can even imagine.
Oh man, that'd be great. The Ghibli Parade.
Ghibli Parade. We should. I think I skipped over it a little bit too quickly. The script, while it was written by Hayao Miyazaki, was adapted to English by the one and only Neil Gaiman, and I have to say that out loud because I'm reading American Gods for the very first time.
Nice.
Right now. Yeah, have you ever read it? So good.
I haven't. He's a really interesting choice because he does create such interesting, fantastical worlds. But it's a challenge, I think, for writers to adapt these films, because they have to take the things that are inherently Japanese and find ways to translate it so that Americans can kind of understand, oh, okay, that's what's going on here, and fit it to the mouths of the animation that's already been done. It's a really challenging job. So while I do have problems with the English adaptation and just the way the voice cast works, I do give major props to Neil Gaiman for what he did here.
So Miyazaki, obviously at the helm, directing this thing too. What was your sense of his directing? As it's been, it's been kind of a long time since the last time we ran our Miyazaki series. A couple of years now.
Yeah, and we hadn't seen anything quite so dark in our last series. There was a really fun one. There was one that was really aimed at kids, and then his biopic. So it was an interesting spread of films across his career. This one really just went for the jugular, and I think he wasn't afraid to hold back. He didn't hold back. There were a lot of interesting images throughout the film. The one that really haunted me more than anything, interestingly, was when those the men hiding under the boar skins appear, because they don't feel like they're people hiding under boar skins. When they first appear, they feel like just spirits, like strange, creepy spirits that are kind of following Akoto as he's kind of running, or as San is helping him to the lake of the spirit of the forest in search of healing. But you get these creepy, like, just black eyes, these almost just like they're just floating across the ground, just creepy bodies. And I just found that like so haunting to see that. And it's revealed early-ish that they are actually men hiding, disguising their man scent by hiding under these boar skins. but they still don't seem that way. It just is so creepy. And it's not until they start like sticking out their blow darts out of the eye holes that you start realizing that that's really what they are. But boy, I tell you, creepy stuff.
Isn't it telling though that thematically I totally agree with you that they play as demons, and so isn't it interesting thematically that here they are dressed like demons, and the animation heavily tilted toward inhuman creatures that are scurrying like slugs across the forest floor, in the place of the gods and demons too, in the forest, in this place where humans are naturally out of place. So once we know that they're humans in the skins of these creatures, isn't it that much more telling that, it at least allows us to pose the question, who's the demon here? Who's the invader? We know that there are challenges right now, with the demons coming out of the forest, but really who's the bigger threat? And I really like that question.
Well, and I mean, they creep up to Okoto when she's not paying attention, and it's like they're, piglets, feeding from mom. But then all of a sudden, Okoto like screams and just like spews blood everywhere, and basically becomes a demon. And all the worm things start crawling all over him. So, I mean, really, you're absolutely right. These people are exactly the demons that destroy this god of the forest.
Ugh, very creepy.
To that point, speaking of just the imagery that Miyazaki uses in the film, I mean, aside from stuff like this, you get just these beautiful shots of nature. You get really just powerful moments where, like when Ashitaka first sees the spirit of the forest, and it's like this deer. You see this herd of deer kind of walking past in the glow of the sun, and then all of a sudden this one comes into frame that just has like more antlers than you've ever seen. It's just a completely
so
impossible
crazy.
amount. It's these, but it's a beautiful image, and there are so many images like that throughout the film. Both the worm possessed, the gods when they become possessed, and the just insane worms that are crawling all over them, that is just so disturbing, and the beauty. And I think again, just like everything else in the film, Miyazaki finds a really interesting balance between these two sides in this world that he's created.
It is said that he is a huge fan of John Ford, and that Irontown was, in fact, greatly inspired by John Ford's Westerns. Did you see it?
Apparently, Miyazaki said he was depicting a frontier town populated with characters from outcast groups and oppressed minorities who rarely, if ever, appear in Japanese films. And I thought that was kind of an interesting a way to kind of approach this world. Irontown very easily could have been this horrible place run by Lady Eboshi, and just it was all like slaves and darkness, and almost like it could have been depicted like the mines in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's depicted as this interesting community where all of these people who live here are like, the women are all former brothel workers, and Lady Eboshi has kind of saved them from that life. Like you've already mentioned, there's all the lepers. And everybody seems happy here. It's a nice way. It's a respite from the world. But they are developing guns and bullets. So there's that.
It's interesting, the contrast between Irontown and Ashitaka's tribe, and they are in the middle of sort of, they're witnessing their own decline, and Irontown is growing. But again, at what cost? Like, it's not just she's liberated the prostitutes. They are now working essentially as, slaves in a, running the baffles on the giant iron mill. She has definitely, taken in the lepers, but at what cost? She keeps them healthy to, do the work that she can't get others to do. So this is very much a town that reflects the challenges of scale. And we have this other town that is shrinking, and the tribe that is shrinking, the Emishi tribe, and yet Irontown is trying to grow, but can't grow without doing enormous damage to the place around them. And so while, Eboshi is not a typical antagonist, she's not evil, right? She's genuinely not evil. She has made choices that she believes benefits her town, and they come in direct conflict with the environment around her. And that's I think one of the most interesting things about Lady Eboshi and her role. She does things that makes her sound like a villain, but like you said, really the community they're just trying to figure out how to thrive, and they haven't figured out how to do that without doing damage to other elements.
There's something to be said about, there's Jigo, another interesting character who is kind of another antagonistic sort of character. At first you meet him, he's kind of, he sells himself as kind of a monk, and he befriends Ashitaka and helps him figure out where he's going, sends him off to Irontown. Then you find out he's in partnership with Lady Eboshi, and he has this whole troop of assassins and who are going to help her fight the samurai clan, whoever it is that she's fighting, as she's trying to take over and dominate. And then he's also trying to, get the head of the spirit of the forest and help her do so. But really, he's trying to get it so that he can, I don't know, you get a sense that he wants to get it so that he can take it to the leader of their community. And so that person can live forever because that's what they believe. But at the same time, you think that maybe he's really doing it for himself. So he's a really interesting guy. And so, but even in that, you get this sense of this kind of, he seems nice, but then he's kind of despicable, but he's likable. And then at the end, he's just like, he's not the guy that Ashitaka has to fight in order to get this head back. Normally, if you like James Cameron was directing this, there would be this big fight, and Ashitaka would cut off this guy's head,
yes,
and then take the head of the spirit of the forest and return it. In this one, not only does Jigo finally say, "All right, fine, but it's your loss," and gives the head, opens the container for Ashitaka and San, but he doesn't die when the spirit of the forest takes its head back and it kind of blasts everything across the land. And in the end, he's just like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do?" And it's just like, oh, okay.
But that gets right to the point, right? Which is that these, I mean, it seems like they're doing evil things, but they really are genuinely self-interested, ego-driven, just trying to do what they think is best to, keep power, keep their place, or improve their own lot in life.
What I also think is so interesting is that it's not just the humans that are this way, but I mean, look at Moro, the wolf mother, or Akoto, or the gorillas. They are all the same. They're all much more self-interested than anybody trying to work together to find a way to make things better for everybody.
Well, and to your point about the gorillas, I mean, you brought up the humans in body sacks, right? The skin sacks. The gorillas are portrayed as totally inanimal, right? When they're in the trees in the storm. They are really scary in the first time we meet them, and the way they're drawn sort of in shadow with no definition to their faces. It was just beautiful art, but really scary portrayal.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So back to Miyazaki as director. He was directly involved in over a reasonably large team for this film.
Yeah, and he is very much integrated in the production of these films. According to reports, he personally oversaw each of the 144,000 cells of animation that were drawn for this film, and it's estimated that he redrew parts of at least 80,000 of them. So very much somebody who wants to be integral to bringing his vision to life. It says a lot about him. Maybe it also says he's a control freak, but he does do some amazing stuff and really makes a film that feels very much like an auteur.
We talked a little bit about, particularly in the Wind Rises. I think we talked about their sort of maturity with CG. But was this the first of their sort of entree into CG elements in their film?
From what I can tell, it is. I don't think there was anything before this. And there was very little in here. If anything, it was used very specifically to kind of just enhance the actual other storytelling that was happening and all the traditional drawings. I think it was only like 5 minutes maybe worth of footage was touched with some computer animation. It was stuff like, I think some of the backgrounds, the way that they would blur when people were going fast, or supposedly like the writhing demon worms, the way that they were kind of added onto creatures. That was, they used some computer animation for that. And so I think this was the beginning of them exploring what they could do with it without relying on it as the tool to just make the film.
Well, it was beautiful, you could start to see it, but it wasn't like, oh, look, there's a giant field of CG, obviously CG grass. You know, I mean, it was pretty elegant. Let's do first shot, last shot.
Yeah, we start on a wide shot of the misty mountaintops. There's a description of the gods of nature that dwell there, and then we tilt down to reveal something lurking in the woods, a demon.
And the last shot, we end on the tops of the dead trees. They are now sprouting with growth, and we tilt down to the shore of the lake, where amidst the new saplings, a tree spirit enters, a full-on death and rebirth.
I mean, I think that's a great first and last shot pairing that really sets everything up, right? You've got this story of these demons that are kind of being brought on by man, but at the end you have this rebirth and how everything is new again, and now it's going to be in a place where people hopefully are going to be able to all live together.
Yeah, starts in the woods, ends over the woods. Implication of, here we are looking closely. Here we are. What have we learned? We have a new awareness, a broader horizon. I think it's a fairly beautiful metaphoric pairing. The cast, we've got, so we're going to talk, we've got two actors for each character. The English casting was done by Jack Fletcher. I don't know who did the Japanese casting.
I couldn't find it.
Probably Hayao Miyazaki himself.
Probably.
Interview, went to their houses, had tea. Ashitaka is played by Yoji Matsuda in the Japanese version, and Billy Crudup in the English version.
Good old Billy.
Billy Crudup.
I just watched him in Jackie. It was a strange pairing watching Jackie and this back to back.
That's funny. I pretty much just want to I can't really think of, and I'm a huge fan of The Big Fish, but whenever I think of Billy Crudup, I'm thinking Dr. Manhattan.
It's funny because that film was not universally loved. But it is one of those roles that I'm the same way. Like, he became so iconic for me also as Dr. Manhattan. It's such an interesting thing to have pulled from that.
What did we think of the voice performance? And I really only have any commentary on the obviously on the American or on the English version of the performances, and only on a couple of them. So tell me where you want to lock in.
Well, I will say Yoji Matsuda, who did the Japanese voice, also appeared in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind for Miyazaki. And I think that other than this might be it. He has also been in The Girl Who Leapt Through Time from 2006, which that's one of those movies that I've heard nothing but good things about, and it's been on my list of things to watch forever. Just haven't gotten around to it. I pretty much am going to, across the board, I am going to struggle with all the actors in the English version because I just feel like they're all a little stilted. And I know they're all trying to read very specific lines that were scripted to fit the lip movements that were done for the Japanese version. And I think they did a good job with the script. I struggle with some of the actors. Billy Crudup he works pretty well for me. And as Ashitaka, I think he carries kind of there's a distance I think that he carries, because Ashitaka, it's a really interesting character that really walks the line between both sides and doesn't really take sides. In fact, he says, I'm here to kind of look at I can't remember what the line he says about, I'm here to look at the work that has been done with untainted eyes or something like that. And I think that speaks a lot to his character and how he's approaching things. He is somebody that is able to be on both sides, and people kind of seem okay with the way he's doing it. He's like playing both sides a little bit like Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars. I don't know. I like him, and I think Billy Crudup actually has this presence that actually is maybe the least offensive of the English speaking cast for me.
Glowing recommendation. I did not have a problem with Billy Crudup, nor did I find him, exceptional in particularly in the film. I thought he was a fine and approachable actor. But again, I didn't watch it with next to the subtitled version, and so I don't have anything immediately to compare it to. I thought, in fact, I'll just say there only one actor that I had trouble with, and it was more of a character challenge that I had than anything else. So, moving on to San, Princess Mononoke herself, Yuriko Ishida in the Japanese, and Claire Danes in the English title. Did you have a problem with Claire? Nobody has problems with Claire, Andy.
I didn't really have a huge problem with her. I think that her role is, she's raised by wolves. She's not overly talkative. And so I guess to that end, she works fine in context of the film. Same thing with Yuriko Ishida. I think that she does just as fine a job in that particular character. What I did find interesting, and this doesn't speak to either of the actors, but I loved this backstory that we get from Moro about how she came to raise San. What a dark story about how her parents were, defiling the woods or whatever they were doing. And when she came in to attack, they threw their baby at her and ran off. It's horrible.
I know. It's terrible.
Oh.
Yes, it is terrible. But hey, she thought she was a wolf, and at least she was.
Yep.
That was good. Yuko Tanaka and Minnie Driver are Lady Eboshi. I actually thought that Minnie Driver was great as Lady Eboshi, and I think anytime we get Minnie Driver in her English accent, she's fantastic.
I actually really liked her too. She was probably my favorite of the cast. One of my favorites. I think that she actually was perfectly cast, and I think she carried the role really well. I think both of them actually did. Yuko Tanaka also did. So I liked both of them.
Okay, and here we part ways. Jigo, Kaoru Kobayashi, and Billy Bob Thornton. You had problems with Billy Bob.
I did. I
did not.
Really?
Oh. Really? I thought he was funny.
That was my biggest problem, and listening to Kaoru Kobayashi play Jigo, I had a much easier time just getting into that particular element of the story. Billy Bob, I don't know.
How would you describe the quality of Kobayashi's voice? Can you maybe do a little bit of it? How would you... Just so I can get a comparison.
No, it just, I don't know. Billy Bob just had a Billy Bob tone, and it just, I don't know. And maybe it wasn't that it was him, but it was so easily identifiable that he pulled me out every time. I mean, maybe that's what it was, but it was
practically Sam Elliott.
Listen to you. But you liked it. So he worked well in that character for you.
Yes, and I want to compare this to Koroku. Koroku's character, he was played by Masahiko Nishimura and John DeMita, and I had real trouble with him because the character is sort of the fool, right? I mean, he's the character that does all the faces. There's always the character that does the faces. He gets kicked in the crotch, he does the face. He stubs his toe, he does the face, right? And there's very much I don't know, what would it be? Ozzie and Harriet kind of relationship between him and his relationship with Jada Pinkett Smith's and Sumi Shimamoto's Toki, which is funny. I mean, it's a funny character, but I found myself taken out every time John DeMita spoke in exactly the opposite way that I found myself interested in hearing Billy Bob Thornton speak as Jigo. I felt I was able to connect more with the funny of Billy Bob Thornton's portrayal and not get taken out of it by the just sort of lampooning who this character is over and over and over again in the case of Koroku. So,
but do you blame that on John DeMita, or is that in the script? Is that an intrinsic script issue where they stuck in this kind of comedic pair, which very much felt like a tonal shift for a lot of it? Almost felt like they needed to get that comedic element in to give everybody a little bit of a laugh. And Toki and Kuroku's relationship was what they chose to do that with. Because I got a sense that was just the nature of their characters.
Yeah, it was too, to me, and that's kind of why I bring that up, because that I think it was probably a character thing, but it reminded me a lot actually of the Castle of Cagliostro, which it's like full of characters like that, like they just were straight off the screen. And in this case, though, I found myself more distracted by the portrayal, and I think of Jada Pinkett Smith too, and that may have been hers was the only performance where I thought, gosh, they are shoehorning words into her mouth. Like, this is not a great adaptation for her. I'm curious. I mean, did you have a sense of the comparison between Toki's Japanese portrayal versus English?
I mean, it's hard to say because it's not like I'm reading the English subtitles while I'm listening to Jada Pinkett Smith, and so it's hard for me to really gauge exactly how the two compared. And I didn't watch them both. I kind of watched half the film in one way, half the film in the other. So I can't compare like how did one line play in two different versions. All I can say to that though is that I didn't really have any problems with either Jada Pinkett Smith or Asumi Shimamoto as Toki. It kind of worked for me in both cases. So I don't know. I can't really fully support you.
Fine. Anybody else you want to talk about in terms of the cast?
I really liked Moro and Akoto, the two gods that we really spend our time with. Akihiro Miwa and Gillian Anderson play Moro, and Hisaya Morishige and Keith David play Akoto. Keith David was a great voice choice for Akoto, my other favorite, paired with Minnie Driver. And Gillian Anderson I actually liked as Moro. And it was interesting because, unless I'm mistaken, the wolf mother in the Japanese version, played by Akihiro Miwa, is a male voice, and Gillian Anderson was a female voice, which I'm guessing they chose to do because they call her the wolf mother, but it's a male voice in the Japanese version. So that was kind of an interesting difference there.
All right, shall we talk briefly about Getting It Made?
Yeah.
Toshio Suzuki, producer.
As he is for so many of the Studio Ghibli films.
Yes, he is. And Miyazaki is, he made this thing. It sounds like he really struggled with getting this thing off the ground. I don't know. Do we say that Hayao Miyazaki had writer's block?
It did sound that way. I mean, it sounded like he kind of started coming up with the inklings of this idea back in the late 70s, and then didn't really start developing it until the mid 90s. And then, because Totoro had some of the same elements in it, it seemed like that just kind of put him in a place where he couldn't figure out where to take this particular story. And it wasn't until he left the project to go do this music video, which I am quite a fan of, for Chage and Asuka, the song On Your Mark. We're going to put a link to that video in the show notes. That helped him. I gave him the break he needed, I think, to kind of figure out the story and get it moving in the direction that it is now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I'm really glad we found that video because it actually tells a whole story. And I was completely snookered because of the dummies that do the supercuts of Miyazaki films and put it over the same song on YouTube. You're dummies. Yep. Stop doing that. You totally snookered me. But we found it, and it actually it tells a complete story. It's really quite lovely. So check out the show notes for that, and you can kind of see what happened to get Miyazaki back on track. Cinematography, Atsushi Okui. So here we have Miyazaki checking every single frame. So what is Atsushi Okui doing?
This is that question that we perpetually run into in animated films. Like, why do they have a cinematographer? A cinematographer is handling kind of the lighting of a film and balancing how the kind of light and shadow play out in an image. And I guess the cinematographer does the same thing. You know, you're going to get this sense of this world, and the cinematographer, I guess, is going to help figure out the right way to light it. I mean, that's my biggest guess with it. I don't know. It's just a weird role I don't ever fully understand. We need to get an animation cinematographer onto the show for a speakeasy so we can figure out what the heck they really are doing.
You know, I bet we know some people who could help us with that.
I bet we do.
I'll bet we do. Quick, to the Bancroft phone. Supervising animators Masahashi Ando, Yoshifumi Kondo, and Kitaro Kosaka.
Those three supervising animators paired with the team of artists they had doing the backgrounds, the key animators they had doing the character animation. I mean, they really created this full world. So big kudos to them. I know Hayao Miyazaki is the one who really kind of takes the credit for these films, but I mean, obviously it's a full team of people, and those three supervising animators really helped guide everything and bring it to fruition. And it's beautiful. It really is just beautiful. The character design, the way that everything blends in with the worlds. I love the differences in the characters of the humans versus the gods and everything. Just some really interesting touches that they have throughout the film.
Yeah, the gods in particular are just creepy, crushingly creepy. The demons in particular, amazing. Post-production, Miyazaki edited it with Takeshi Seiyama. It was edited tight. I mean, edited tight for a Miyazaki film.
Well, yeah. I mean, that being said, I mean, it is a long animated film, and I think that it's something that some people might have issues with. I mean, it runs full, 2 hours?
It's like 2:12,
14 minutes. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a hefty length, and you're certainly not going to get that sort of release from a Disney film. Some people have real issues with long films, and I think if the story is working, then there really isn't any issue to have with the length. And this is one of those cases where, I have no issue with the length of this film. I think that everything in it is really there for a reason. So I really I like it.
Well, I do too. We started it at 8:00, and the only person who fell asleep was my wife. So that's really telling, because she falls asleep at every movie that we watch as a family. So that my kids both hung in there until after 10 to watch this animated film is telling of itself. I think it works. I really think it works. Sound, Michihiro Itô, sound editor, and music, Joe Hisaishi.
The sound and music in this film are stellar. I think the sound adds to all of this world, this world building that we've been talking about. I mean, you have amazing battle scenes when the clan of the boar gods charges, and you just get these massive explosions, and the grenades are getting dropped on them. I mean, it's just insane. And then the squealing and the shrieking and the cries and the way that the guns sound and just everything. I mean, there's so much brought to life through the use of sound. That, I mean, it's really stellar work that they do here. And then, of course, Joe Hisaishi, I have my 10 J's of composing, and he is one of them. I think that the work he does here is some of his best. The themes here are just haunting and beautiful, and they stick in my head forever. I have been humming the theme for this for a week now. I just can't get it out of my head. Which is a good thing. It's a beautiful theme. Just a really haunting, and it fits perfectly with the world that Miyazaki created.
I could not agree more. And, with all the commentary that we have even on this show about the death of the great theme, the great cinema theme, boy, I didn't have a problem with this film. I think it locked into my brain too. I think it's just terrific. I feel like every time you mention your list of J's, it's growing. When we started this show, weren't there like 6? How has this
it's always
happened?
been 10.
It's always been 10?
James, Jerry, Joe, John.
James, Jerry.
There's a lot of Johns.
Oh, dear. How did it do at awards season? Fairly well, I think.
Yeah, the film had 13 wins and 5 other nominations. The ones I was going to mention are at the Annie Awards, which is the big animation film awards. It was nominated for Outstanding Individual Achievement for Directing in an Animated Feature Production. Hayao Miyazaki was nominated for the English language version, interestingly, that version. It did lose to Toy Story 2, unfortunately. And at the awards of the Japanese Academy, it won for Best Film, and it got a special award. And I thought this was an interesting way that they wrote it. A special award to a talented singer who sang the theme song for the film. Yoshikazu Mera got an award for that. So kudos to them and for all the other awards that it received. Before we jump into the budget, Pete, there's one other thing that I thought was really interesting. That in 2012, they actually adapted this for the stage, which I think is interesting. It was the first stage adaptation of a Studio Ghibli film.
What?
Yeah, it was between Whole Hog Theater and Studio Ghibli, and I think they somehow, it was Nick Park actually from Aardman who introduced the two of them together. Aardman, of course, the home of Wallace and Gromit and a lot of other wonderful animated films. They introduced all these people together, and Toshio Suzuki thought it would be a great idea. And so they made this play, and it features large puppets made out of recycled and reclaimed materials. And it is, I guess it's been just hugely popular when the first performances sold out like a year in advance. And after it played in London, it went to Japan and then back to London. And these performances just keep selling out, or at least they were selling out. I don't know if it's still running, but it ran for a couple years. So
wow.
I have no idea if it's ever going to make a leap over to the US, but I am really fascinated by this stage adaptation, and I would love to see it if it ever makes its way here.
That's fantastic. Because
Crazy
again,
stuff.
of the blood and the archery, how do you, right? I want to see all of that.
I would love to see how they pull that off. It would be very interesting.
How did it do in the numbers, Andy?
Well, Pete, Hayao Miyazaki and his team had a budget of 2.3 billion yen, which sounds like a lot, but it was about 19.4 million, or just over $29 million in today's dollars. The movie opened in Japan on July 12th, 1997, and became a sensation, steamrolling its way to the top of the charts to become the highest-grossing film in Japan, at least until a few months later when Titanic steamrolled over it. It did maintain its status as the highest-grossing Japanese film for a few more years until 2001, but we'll talk about that more next week. The movie went on to gross 14.5 billion yen, which was 148 million, or 222 million in today's dollars. Disney had the right to distribute it, but the PG-13 dark nature of the story wasn't in their camp, so they turned it over to the Weinsteins over at Miramax. But as per typical Harvey, he demanded cuts made to the film. In response, Tokio Suzuki sent Weinstein a katana with a message stating, "No cuts." Oh, I love that.
That Japanese subtlety.
I know, right? It's great. I'm not actually sure if this is why it took several years to release in the US, but it took over 2 years before we would get to see it. Miramax did put a lot of money into the English dub, hiring Neil Gaiman, as we said, to do the adaptation, and all those wonderful actors that we've talked about. Unfortunately, they opted to not put any money into the advertising, and because of that, it never really found its home theatrically here. The movie started its limited theatrical release in the U.S. on 8 screens October 29th, 1999, opposite The House on Haunted Hill remake, Wes Craven's musical drama Music of the Heart, and the fantastic Being John Malkovich, which we've talked about on the show. It eventually expanded to 129 screens, but only ended up making about 2.4 million, or about 3.4 million in today's dollars. With about another 9 million it earned around the world, the movie ended up grossing just under 239 million in today's dollars, giving it an adjusted profit per finished minute of just over 1.5 million.
That's a lot of news for this one, especially coming off our Lorraine series.
That was a lot of news.
Were you feeling like you needed to make up for something?
I think that's what happened, yes.
And let me just tell you, I don't like to give these real-time critiques about your work, right? But I do feel like you could have come up with a more grotesque metaphor for what Titanic did to this film. You said it was steamrolled, and I think you could have done better.
It was the iceberg.
Yeah, I feel like the Titanic doesn't do as much steamrolling. Andy, I think it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Steamroll your way over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, or you can just swipe over to in your show notes on your podcast app of choice, and you can tap on Flick Chart. That'll take you straight to this movie. In the Flick Chart list, you can just click Add to My List, and let's see how your ranking of Princess Mononoke stacks up to our ranking of Princess Mononoke today. Where do we start?
First up, Pete, we are back to the Oh Brother block. Princess Mononoke,
dear.
Or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Indeed, indeed.
I'm Oh Brother.
I am Princess Mononoke.
Really?
I am.
Oh dear, first one. All right.
I know, first one. We're starting with some sparring. So let's do it.
Here we go. All right.
1, 2, 3. Paper.
Scissors.
Ooh.
Okay. I feel like I can give up almost every other one since I got it into the bottom half.
That's terrible of you. All right, Princess Mononoke or La Femme Nikita? Mononoke for me.
You can have it, Andy. No, I actually mean that legitimately. I would watch Mononoke first.
Princess Mononoke or no? Our last movie.
You know?
I'm gonna
I'm going to say no.
Mononoke. You're going to
Really?
say no? I'm going to
Yes.
say Mononoke.
I can't
Absolutely.
believe I'm saying no. All right, here we go.
Here we go. 1,
2, 3. Paper.
Rock. Oh, man. Poor princess.
She can hold her own.
Princess Mononoke or Gallipoli? Princess Mononoke, please.
You can have it. Yes, sir.
Princess Mononoke or The Bourne Legacy? Mononoke.
Okay.
Mononoke or La Vie en Rose?
Oh, Mononoke.
Mononoke for me, too.
Yeah.
Princess Mononoke or Sophie's Choice? Princess Mononoke
Princess
for
Mononoke.
me.
Princess Mononoke is a sequel.
Oh, jeez. You're terrible. Princess Mononoke or King's Row?
Princess Mononoke. Yeah.
Well, there she sits, way back where she shouldn't be. 191 on our Flick Chart. Oh,
wow.
Brutal.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah, that's on you. That is on you.
Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it. It's exactly where it needs to be. That's legit. For our partners over there at letterboxd.com, where does this land on your star rating, and did you like it?
It is. I want you to go first, Pete.
Do you? Well, I could do that. I currently have it as logged. I have watched it. Actually, it's also exactly where it ended up on my Flick Chart, which is right in the middle. I gave this a 3-star, a 3-star rating, and I haven't posted my review yet. Because
did you like it?
I did not. I did not like it.
So it's 3 stars, but you did not like it.
I did not like it. I feel like 3 stars says enough what my feeling is.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I give it 5 stars, Pete.
5 stars.
I really I've not been able to stop thinking about it. It really hit me. And I 5 stars, and I liked it. That is.
Let me just ask you this: did your rating change over the last several days? I mean, have you?
It did. It did. I think I was at 4.5, and then it just kind of kept creeping up.
I was at 3.5, and
Ooh.
over the course of the weekend, I knocked off a 0.5 star.
Interesting. And our conversation didn't bring it back.
No, no, alas. Though I should give you that extra 0.5 star just because of how delighted I am about the results of our rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, I think because of that, we deserve to call it a like. On
okay, you know what, Andy?
Letterboxd.
I am nothing if not a benevolent dictator. Please take the like.
All right. So on average, it's 4 stars, and we're giving it a liked. So
yes,
there you
sir.
go, Letterboxd fans.
Yes, sir. Where do we go from here?
Well, we are going to be talking about Spirited Away, Miyazaki's very next film that came out in 2001. And I'm looking forward to talking about that one next week.
I wish these were streaming in more places.
Well, it's like Disney. You know, they don't stream their films very much, at least the big ones. And I know they have a distribution deal with Studio Ghibli to release all of their films over here in the U.S. But I obviously it doesn't include a streaming deal.
They're a little bit tough to come by if you can't find them. Definitely check your local library. They've got them all at mine. They're generally checked out. But I did do I've been doing the Blu-rays since I can't get them streaming.
Nice.
They're
pretty.
Blu-ray's pretty good, Andy. I don't know if you've heard this. It's a craze. It's so much better than Laserdisc. I think you should give it a shot.
I'll consider that.
Until then, I gotta go to bed.
All right, well, I am off to go stand in a tree and rattle my head around a little bit.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
And I managed to find a 1-star. Mostly, It is clear that this is one of those movies that apparently very few fulfillment houses can deliver well. Because most of everybody, I don't know how anybody can actually give this a positive review, because how anybody was able to get an unscratched, uncracked disc, judging by these comments, is beyond me. But I did have one person who managed to get a disc. And that is Lady J, who says, watch this without audio.
Okay.
This movie didn't make any sense to me except for the tree nature hugging undertone. It seems all over the place with storylines. I wouldn't be able to explain what this movie is about if I had to. Is it about the kid from this long-lost tribe and his coming of age? Is it about Irontown and the exploitation of nature and its resources? Is it about giant wolves and pig demons, among other possible themes? I didn't get it. The animation sequences get the only credit in my book. I say rent it first and then decide if you want it in your collection. Now, I'm just saying, for watching it without any audio, not bad. Right?
That's the best part of that.
Not,
it really
not bad. What's yours?
Well, I went a little higher than you, Pete. I went with a 3-star by K-Cup Coffee User. That's right. Reviews, uses coffee, reviews movies. 3-star that says, anime. At least it has some good battles.
Thanks, anime. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.